Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digital Boss Boardroom, and happy Friday. I'm so excited you're here. This is where we share valuable and actionable knowledge specifically curated for small business owners to help you better market your small business online. I'm your host, Bobbi Baehne, and this episode is brought to you by the digital marketing experts at Think Big, Go Local. So listen, we want to connect with you guys. So check the description in this video. Our social handles are all over the place. Connect with us there. Leave some comments. Jump in this conversation. We want to hear about your experiences also. And I also just want to mention, the routine. Like and share this podcast. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. So today we are going to be talking with my business partner, once again, Mr. Brian Rugg, and we have a really interesting topic. Today, I think he shared with me the title is the Dead Web Designer, and we have some stories to share with you about this. So let's bring Brian on here. Hey, Brian.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy
Friday.
Friday.
Sure after last time, so yeah.
So I got to ask before we get started, are you coming out all the way to McHenry to watch us dye the river green tomorrow? Because it's kind of cool.
Was that tomorrow?
That is tomorrow. Yes.
Yeah, possibly I can make it.
Yeah, tomorrow here in McHenry, if you're local, we're dyeing the river green. There's music everywhere. There's a 5K in the morning, which is such a healthy way to start out the day because then there is a whole lot of green beer and drinking going on for the rest of the day. My house is decorated. It looks so cool. I'm excited.
Maybe I'll get the kayak out just for fun and see how green I can end up.
Yeah, absolutely. You should go, there's crazy people that'll be out there on jet skis and, they do dumb things because it's St. Patrick's Day. So let's dive into this topic. So today, the title is The Dead Web Designer. I know what we mean by this, but really we're going to talk a bit about web design today and really more specifically, these people who create these kind of unique platforms, right? So I'm going to let you take over and I will jump in when I need to. And Kent, we always love to hear your opinion. So feel free to dive in also, but go ahead, Brian, what's up?
Yeah. So the title sounds kind of grim, I'll admit. We have a more recent project the last month or two. It started out simple and it's gotten very complicated. And that's because the previous web designer, the person who built the site originally, died. So the way this started out, somebody referred our client to us. They were looking for new hosting. So, if you have a website, you have to host it somewhere. Hosting is how your website is on the internet. Their current hosting service was firing our client. They just said, we're done hosting you. You have to go find somewhere else. So on the surface, I thought, okay, hosting, that's pretty straightforward. We moved the site to our server and the end. But once I got into it, it turns out their website basically only worked on their current host in the current setup. And the reason is the site was built in 2014. And as time moved on, the way it was built, the various plugins associated with the site stopped functioning and would no longer work on today's current technology. So
let me jump in here real quick and mention something because I've had this happen to me personally in the past. So we're going to be talking about web design. So there's a platform where you do web development, right? We talked a little bit about hosting. That's where all those files get stored. So when someone's online and they look for your website, everything has to be stored somewhere. So that's an expense if you have a website that you're going to incur. But one thing is it's no matter who designs your website, you need to have control and have access to your hosting. So if you hire a web designer and they just do this for you and you don't have direct access, let me tell you a little story, not the dead web designer, but it's a porn story, if that makes it exciting. I used to work in the private club business, and I was the marketing director, but didn't have access to the hosting account. One of the board members had set it up and didn't renew his credit card. So when the hosting account, actually, it might have been the domain, but this can happen in either scenario, expired and there was nothing there to renew it. Someone hijacked it. And one day I show up to work in my private exclusive country club and I get a call from one of my members. Bobbi, have you looked at the website today? I went in there. It was a static pornography page that they had put there to hijack us to get our files back. It was a disaster, and I had to bring in an expert, and the whole thing was a mess. But don't trust anybody, because if something happens to them and you don't have access, you could lose everything you paid for. So I just wanted to throw that story in there as you're getting ready to tell yours, because it can be a disaster.
Yeah, and that kind of thing can happen, right? So in this case, what happened is the website's built on a platform called WordPress. It helps simplify designing websites so you don't have to code it from scratch and have an IT kind of brain, right? Odds are, if you have a small business and you have a website, it's probably built on WordPress. It's that prevalent. WordPress adds functionality through what's called a plugin. So just think of it as an app for your phone. If you want a calendar on your WordPress website, you can search and find a calendar plugin. There's probably hundreds of them out there. You install it on the site, you click a few check boxes, and you have a calendar. So this previous designer had used a number of plugins to make things work on this website. Now, the way these plugins work, a lot of them start out free, which sounds great. But the way the plugin developers make their money is if you want to do anything out of the box that's not included with the sort of standard plugin, you want to change a color, you want to add some kind of feature, you'll have to pay for the pro version of the plugin, and that will enable you to do what you really want to do. So those pro plans are usually a subscription annual fee for continued updates, right? So the other thing about WordPress is it updates over time, just like any software. Microsoft Windows is on, version 11 or whatever it is, right? So you have to keep updating to stay current, to keep things secure is probably the big one. But as time goes on, technology changes and software has to adapt. So plugins are the same way. So again, with this website, the designer had installed plugins. Some of them were specialized, and they all had accounts to them. So when I got into trying to move the site to the new host, I found out, well, okay, when I move it to our new server, which is up to date and current technology, the website blows up. Everything breaks, nothing works. And the solution is to update the plugins and update the theme. When I ran those updates, I found out that I needed to renew my subscription to the plugins. So I contacted the client. I said, hey, we got to update these plugins. And they, of course, said, what are you talking about? So they had no clue that there were plugins. They didn't even know what a plugin was. And I understand on a certain level. I mean, some of you, your eyes are probably glazing over even now, I know. But if you do have a website, you should be aware of any accounts associated with the website. So Bobbi mentioned one, that was the domain name. And they weren't paying attention to it. And some porn people took it over when they weren't paying attention. And there you go, right? So same thing with a website. You may be aware you have a domain name. It's at GoDaddy or wherever it is, sure. But you might have some of these plugins that require subscriptions. Now, the way we work to avoid just this situation, in case I get hit by a bus or something, we set up accounts in the client's name attached to their credit card, and we have the username and passwords, and we have these on file, and they have access to these if they need them. And that way, if they ever, for whatever reason, if we part ways, they'll have everything they need to continue maintaining the site. In this case, the designer had all that information. the previous host, they were unable to get access to some of these accounts. I couldn't get access. I ended up reaching out to, one of the plugin developers. They were very nice about it. Actually, they expressed their condolences. And of course, I didn't know this guy at all, but I thought, well, that's very nice of them, and they enabled kind of a workaround to get us access to the account. And now you have to understand, anything software related, people are very security conscious. So they're not going to let some Yahoo come in and say, oh, the previous guy died, can you give me access? They're not going to believe it, right? So just trying to get access to the accounts was extremely difficult. Another one of the plugins, we couldn't access the account, but they showed us how we could set up a new account. But then we had to transfer data from the old and import it into the new, and that was a big pain. Took extra time, and if we just had access to the original account, we wouldn't have had those problems.
So this is making me think. So Kent has thrown a couple comments. These are coming from the YouTube channel.
Okay.
Kent said he built his website with a plug and play, like a site like Wix, GoDaddy. There's all kinds of platforms that make it easy for you to do that. He said it looked great for a 6th grade project, but he didn't realize the management that needs to be done. Needless to say, he's now working with Think Big Go Local, and in Kent's words, pleased as peaches with the collaborative approach and professionalism. No more 6th grade work. But the thing that business owners need to keep in mind, kind of to what you're saying, is it's never a build it and let it go thing. And I think that that's what happens a lot of times. Either you work with a web developer, you think it's done and you move on, or you've built your own plug and play thing. You get it done, you take a deep breath and you move on, not realizing that things are always changing. And as soon as one platform advances and that next thing that's reliant on that platform doesn't, stuff breaks. So it's not just building that website, but truly understanding what maintenance is all about so that you don't have that unexpected problem. It's just, I have the same thing with my iPad and my iPhone. I'll have an app I don't use for a while. I go to use it, and either those app developers didn't stay on top of it, and now it no longer works on my phone and I have to delete it, right? So we see it in all the platforms, but super important for your business website because you're probably not logging into it every day. So you probably don't even realize till somebody tells you what's broken. At that point, how many other people have seen it, had a bad experience, bounced off and went somewhere else, and you never even knew? So like that maintenance piece is really a big deal. Big deal.
Yeah. And especially, again, WordPress, 47% of all websites are built using WordPress.
And they update all the time.
Exactly. And there's no rhyme or reason. I had one guy, we offer hosting and maintenance combined. And he was kind of irritated with me. He's like, when do you even update? I'm like, there's no set schedule. Tomorrow they could push out an update. Oh, it's security patch, install it immediately, right? And also, if they do push out, let's just say, a regular update, I don't always rush to update it immediately because I like to see the bugs get shaken out first for the other people who updated it and blew something up. So I've seen where they update it and the next day there's a patch like, oops, we forgot something. So what about a set schedule? So you have to pay attention to it, right?
Right. And like backups too, right? If you have something scheduled to do routine backups, that can break with an update to the platform as well. And now something goes wrong and you weren't aware and your backups aren't current and you can't just fix things when they do break. So many reasons to make sure you are either working with someone that does hosting and maintenance or that you really know what you're doing when it comes to keeping your site up to date.
Yeah.
So continue on with this client.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. So, and back to WordPress, you can run these updates yourself. It's doable. It's not rocket science, but sometimes things can go wrong. That's where you need to know how to fix it. I'm going to pick on GoDaddy a little bit. They have what's called a managed WordPress plan. But whenever I inherited a site from that plan, I can't tell what they were managing because there are updates 4 or 5 versions behind, and so I honestly don't know what that means. But okay, so back to this client. keeping things updated. So this project it just keeps getting deeper and deeper, right? So aside from the need to know what your accounts are, you also need to know what your website can and cannot do, what it shouldn't do, right? So this client, originally the site was built to enable their employees to enter time and generate timesheets. WordPress really, I'll give this guy credit. He made it work, but the way they're using this is the timesheets are entered and they exist only in the website. Same is true of some other information. It's a bus company, so they give their drivers routes. These routes only exist in the website. They're built using HTML, so someone over there is able to go in there and edit colors and things. But editing in HTML is very tedious. It's coding. So the problem is now, again, things have broken, and their timesheet formatting is broken, and the routes they have can't be downloaded from there. So what that means is they have no copies of anything anywhere else. So if the site and the site as it is now, here's where we are right this moment. We're building a new site and recreating the functionality using today's technology, and trying to make improvements, right? So in the new format, they have routes. They're done in an Excel spreadsheet that they can save in cloud storage on their side. And then when they're ready to have it on the website, it's going to be a PDF, which is easy for everybody. That way, if the site blows up, there's an outage, the internet goes down, sometimes things happen, they'll still have a copy of their files where they can get to them. The site, so while we're building this, their old site is still up and running. We managed to, so here's where they are. They cannot back up, they cannot update the site to the current version of anything. We had to back it down to where it had been to keep things working. That's we figured out their hosting runs automatic updates when they come in, and every time they ran it, it blew everything up. So we had to turn that off. But what that means then is their website is very vulnerable to hacking. They are on a now unsupported underlying technology. I won't get too deep in the weeds, but this technology was support stopped about a year and a half, 2 years ago. So it's extremely vulnerable to hacking. And from my perspective, I wouldn't have even had tried to build the timesheet function into the website to begin with.
Right? Like there's complex. So many tools for those kinds of things.
You can subscribe to a third-party platform, custom built just for that, and do it that way. Like videos, host them on YouTube. You can redisplay them on your website. That's way better than trying to make your website a video repository. And another problem with that too is hosting uses space and bandwidth, and you pay for that. So right now their old site has over 10,000 timesheets. I tried to export an Excel spreadsheet, and the server cut it off because the data was too large and using too much bandwidth.
Is that slowing their website loading time down?
No, not necessarily, but
what do I know?
But they have to pay more for the storage that the files are taking up, right?
Just for files that they're not using anymore because they were old routes. Probably.
Right. They don't really need timesheets from 10 years ago, but they're still on there.
No, I think that's such good advice. Like, know what your website, like, really have in mind, why do you have a website? What's its functionality? Who is it serving? Who's going to be going there, right? And using the right tools for the right job. Really important.
Exactly. Right. So so our new version is aimed at making improvements. They're still going to do the timesheets through the site, but at least they're going to have records of that elsewhere again, and it'll be improved. Another thing we found too, back to plugins, right? So to build the timesheets, we're using the same plugin that enables the timesheet. It's basically like an online form, right? But the previous designer used a plugin that was, I don't know, made by sort of a homegrown developer guy. Like anybody can author a plugin.
Yeah.
This guy stopped supporting that plugin in 2017. I actually found him out there, and he left a note that said, "I just don't have time to keep this up anymore."
So
So that no longer works, and the way they built it out can't even be replicated anymore because the one guy in the universe made a specialized plugin and then gave up on it. And so
for people who are trying, because I know when I started the business, I was doing this too, who are either are trying to build their own websites, or maybe they had something built and they're trying to manage it. Do you have any tips for how people can effectively choose the plugins that they want to use? I know that generally there's like a plugin store and they do have ratings, but what are some of the things that people want to look for when choosing that tool to use?
Yeah. So within WordPress, you can search for plugins. Generally, they'll have a rating and number of installations and how recently it's been updated. So those are the three things I look at. If I see 300, 400, 500,000 people have installed it, odds are it's pretty good. People like it, works well. If it's got 4 or 5 star ratings and very few complaints, that's a good sign. And then if it says, I've seen somewhere it says last updated 3 years ago.
Yeah, not a good sign, right?
I'm not touching that, right?
Yeah.
So, but if I see it was last updated within the last week or 2 weeks or even a couple months, that shows that it's actively maintained. Now, of course, there's no guarantees out there, but again, also, you really want to sit back with any web project. Really, you want to sit back and really define your requirements. What are we trying to accomplish? What do we need to have happen? And how do we make that happen? And one thing, sometimes people will come to me with their plan already laid out. We want to do X, Y, and Z in this way. And I'm willing to accept they might be right. But I want to look at that first and say, okay, well, the way I see this, you are trying to accomplish X. And that means not doing what you're talking about, but instead, why don't we do this? And here's why. Because again, you want to get to your ultimate goal, but the way you get there may not be how you think it is, right? So, and that's where we come in. We help define those and how does that look in a website and that sort of thing. So,
hire the professionals because they, really, right? Like keeping you focused. Because I know as business owners, we get a shiny thing in our head that we want to accomplish. And if it's not our expertise, we maybe don't know the easiest path to get there.
Right.
Which kind of, this whole story kind of reminds me, I do not believe this particular web developer has passed away. However, years ago when I first started Think Big, Go Local, there was a local web designer who, phenomenal person, really loved the coding side of things. And I remember him trying to sell me on the fact that he built his own proprietary platform. And he was building websites for local businesses on his platform specifically. And I remember at the time thinking, you're such a great guy, clearly have way more knowledge about this coding and things than I do. However, what happens when something happens to you? Like, I mean, who knows? It could be a health event that takes place. You could move away and trying to mitigate, now I can't even move my content, right? Like, so one thing, I couldn't move that website. I would have to hire someone and redo the entire thing because his platform's not going to talk to another platform.
Right.
And, when something happens, I have no support, nobody to help me move it, nobody to help redesign it. Like, it was a terrible idea. So, I mean, and it's not that I ever want any other business owner not to succeed, but I think small business owners need to be really cautious over people talking about something proprietary that's maybe not going to help you down the road when it's time to restructure, redesign, move something over. I mean, had to be a nightmare when he was no longer anymore.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen marketing companies that have their own proprietary website platform.
Yep.
And if you leave, you basically can't take your website with you because it won't work
Yep.
anywhere but on that platform. Now, obviously, platforms are platforms, right? A WordPress website isn't going to work on a different platform either. However, WordPress is very prevalent, very well supported, and you can host it anywhere. And that's one of the reasons we use it, is it's so portable. So we offer hosting and maintenance, but you're not required to host with us for us to build you a website. We can build that for you, and you can go host it wherever you want. Obviously, we'd love to have you, but it's not a requirement, right? And even if you wanted to switch hosts, a year later, you can do that. You can pick up your site and move it. But in Wix and Squarespace, GoDaddy has a website builder. Those websites built there only work on those platforms. Shopify is another one. It's if you're just getting into e-commerce and don't want to spend a lot of money, Shopify is actually quite good, I think. But if your business really expands and you get into the big time, you'll need to get off Shopify and start over, because you won't be able to transport that anywhere else, right? So yeah, I think it's important to consider how is your site being built? What's the platform? Custom coding. So that's another one. I mean, you can build a site from scratch with no platform. That takes more time and money and expertise and ongoing maintenance. Running, right? So, and it's, I mean, my corporate experience, that's how sites were built. You had an entire IT department to do it. Great, good. But even on a WordPress website, and this client, again, you can do custom coding. And I try and avoid it, because if you do too much custom coding, again, you're coding at a certain time. You're coding on version X, and 2 years later, you're on version X.21, whatever it is. What you coded back then may no longer work and may need to be modified. And again, this previous designer did some custom coding. I'm still not sure I've found it all. So that's the other thing. Even though it's WordPress, every site can be different depending on what you've done. And trying to dig that stuff out of there can be very frustrating. And it would have been nice to just ask, like, oh, how'd you do this? Because I can't find it. It's here and there.
It would have been.
Right. So, yeah.
But we're talking about the dead web designer today.
Correct.
We didn't have that luxury.
Exactly. So I do make a point of telling people, again, I'm not even sure they always understand what I'm saying, but I do point out we avoid custom coding, doing too much of it where it might cause you problems later on.
Well, this was awesome, Brian. And I often am really blown away by the lack of thought that some small businesses put into their website, or the fact that it's just something they want to get done fast and inexpensively, not realizing that's the first impression you're making on someone that doesn't know you yet. And heck, if they already know you, then what's the point, right? They're probably not needing to go to your website. They're going to call you. So your site is really that place that you hope is found in search for people that are looking for your products and services. And if they get there and their first experience isn't a good one, you may not even realize, especially I find that most small business owners that are doing the fast and cheap version of a website also really aren't spending time on Google Analytics and really seeing what is happening when people get to your site. Are they finding you? First of all, are they having a good experience when they get there? Are they staying on your website and moving around? Or are they bouncing out? I mean, I just really wish small businesses put a little bit more thought into, what are you trying to accomplish? How do you want to show up? And what's that first impression you want to leave to convert someone who's interested into a potential client, right? And I see it so often, or I hear this all the time. Well, ignore my website. It's a work in progress. Well, no, it's not. People are finding it. Right. And you don't get to jump on there when they get there and say, oh, by the way, it's a work in progress. Just ignore my site. I know it's a hot mess. No, everybody, that's your first impression. Like, you don't walk into a networking meeting and look like you just came out of the garden or whatever and, expect people to perceive you a certain way. So I appreciate these kind of conversations because there's so much more thought that needs to go into it. Yeah. People really need to understand, why do you pay a professional for your website versus, I know You can get it done cheap, but what's the end result going to be when you do that? So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, interesting. I know I was looking at somebody's stuff yesterday who's newly into the web development space, who's building the cheapest websites I have ever seen. And my first thought is, we can all make a cute website. Is it showing up? What are people paying for? Because they're hardly paying anything, which I know means you're not spending the time that you should be spending to make sure there's a really good experience. There's just a lot that goes into it. So thanks for sharing that with us today.
Sure. Yeah.
And we hope nobody else's web designer ends up in the dead web designer category, obviously. But you do need to be thinking about what happens if I give too much power, too much control, I guess, to anybody without understanding. And you need to go into this relationship with your web designer knowing what to ask, right? So a lot of what you shared, Brian, are the things that people need to know, have documented. Make sure you can access your domain, your hosting, your web platform. Make sure you can access any plugins that may have, because a lot of those have a third-party login in their own website as well, where you can go, do that. So you need to have all of that stuff documented. So if something happens or you part ways, you can easily transition to somebody new and not lose functionality, not lose your
time
design.
and money and
time and money. Absolutely. Well, awesome. Well, it's 12:30 already.
All right.
So we're going to wrap this up. Any last minute tips you want to share with anyone, Brian?
No, it's Friday. You've heard enough for me so far.
I know. I need to. I've got to get my liver in practice. Tomorrow is a big day. We got to warm it up tonight. So thank you so much to everybody for joining us today. If you've got any feedback, drop it in the comments. If you've got some expertise or experiences that you want to share with our audience, we'd love to have you on the show. So reach out and let us know. You can find me at LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is in the description too. So let's connect over there. I'm definitely working on that platform this year. I made a commitment. So anyways, join us next week. We will be back here next Friday at noon with a brand new episode. And until then, I hope all you badasses have a kick-ass weekend and a productive and profitable week and a super fun Shamrock weekend, because, it's the party weekend. My daughter's birthday is on St. Patrick's Day. So is one of my favorite web designers that I'm working with, or not web designers, web designer, graphic designer I work with on a big project we have. It's his birthday on St. Patrick's Day. So happy birthday, James. I know you tune in. Anyways, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here again next Friday.